Well, good morning, everybody. This is Peter speaking. I'm flying solo today. My colleague and friend Matthew Wyatt, of course, is out attending a rugby game. His son's a very keen rugby player, so Matthew has decided to go and watch him play, which is very important. He's a little boy growing up, and it's a big deal for little kids like that. So Matthew won't be joining us today, but nevertheless we'll persevere onwards, and we're going to look at selections for the 9th of April, which was a couple of Saturdays ago. Now, before I start, unfortunately, when I'm doing it on my own, it's very difficult for me to monitor questions and because it sometimes interrupts the continuity and the flow of things. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to work through the selections, and wherever I feel I need to, I will elaborate on the selections if necessary to explain why they were made and so on. If you have any questions, urgent questions that concern you about anything that's discussed today, then please feel free to email me at peter@iqpro.com.au, or of course email Matthew or contact Matthew. If not, if you want to carry the questions over to the next webinar, we'll be only too pleased to refer back and answer them. So please understand the restrictions that apply today, and I just beg your indulgence in that regard. So let's get on with this, and really today I want to illustrate that running this software, once you learn how and once you understand the processes, is not, it's not sort of particularly difficult. It's pretty straightforward when you think about it. Sure, you've got to have a good command of what's required in terms of selection priorities and so on. But if you're consistent and you're disciplined and you apply the processes in accordance with the training and so on, I think that you end up getting the desired results in the medium to long term. And so it is important to remember that. And I'm saying that particularly for some newer clients who perhaps may have reservations about the effectiveness of the software and the selection processes that are employed. It is important, very important, to have a thorough grasp and understanding of the selection priorities, and when you do that, it's important to be consistent in your application of those selection priorities, and to be disciplined and to work to the guidelines. In other words, let the software indicate to you whether the race is a trading race or not. Your obligation to yourself is to make the selections that best accommodate the prevailing money profile in races, and then let the software be the arbiter as to whether you continue to trade or whether you don't. And I think if you develop that sort of consistent sort of strategy, then you're going to get the best results over the course of time. So let's get underway with this, and you're going to see that most of these selections today, if not all of them, are very straightforward. Here we have the first selection race, which was this one here, and you can see that in trifecta it's just a basic selection outcome, 50, 70 and 90 to recognised money gaps. If we go to percentage return, you can see the separator locations endorse the defining money gaps in trifecta, and so we have our first trading race with 40 combinations, and it's a healthy winner. So, once again, by applying the processes as we recommend that you do, and understanding the application of the selection priorities, then you can achieve very good results. And so we always like to get away to a flying start on any day, so that's a good start. Okay, we move on to the next race. Now this is our first percentage return, and as you can see, I'll just take the lock off here. The selection, the automatic selections that have been provided by the program sort of marry in with the ultimate selections that we're going to make here. You can see that we're dealing with a very weak favourite, number 3. It's weak in terms of percentage, and of course it's sitting third in the field order, so that means that we have runners over the last 5 intervals that have attracted more late money than the favourite. So in other words, it's weakening in the betting. So we have a money competitive group of 1, 9, 7 and 5 to stack up against this weak favourite, and that group on its own is holding more than the required minimum of 47.5%. You can see the favourite has no numbers in the WUP column. It's showing a negative value in the UDIF, so we're quite happy to trade against this favourite with the favourite, the meat and the sandwich, as it were. 2 runners attracting slightly more money over the last 5 intervals, and 2 runners, money competitive with our favourite here over the last 5 intervals. And you can see that we've got that money competitiveness here back at the 1 minute mark, and in fact all the way back, as you can see. So defined trading group would be the top, the 4 runners up against the weak favourite, and that gives us a healthy return. So that's our first percentage return trading opportunity. Moving on to the next one, which is a trifecta selection, and I think you can see here now, if we investigate this, we have a potential megafecta, right? A win dividend of $2, an associated money gap of 2.85. Let's go to percentage return, but we notice that when we go to percentage return, the favourite is second in the field. It's not, it hasn't attracted the most money over the last 5 intervals in this race. So at the business end of things, the favourite is losing market support, and that's the very thing we don't want to see if we're going to consider megafecta in trifecta. And you can see here quite clearly the money supports that. The money's quite solid there, but it starts to decline, and here you've got runners further down the field that are quite money competitive with our favourite right when we're going to make our final decision. So even though we could, on the basis of win dividend and money gap size, go megafecta, there is some question about whether the favourite's strongly enough supported. Well, I don't think there's any question about it. It's quite obvious that the favourite is not strongly enough supported to justify singling it out to come first on its own. So therefore, we're going to opt for group selections, in which case we're going to cover the top 3 runners for first and second, and we're going to cover down to runner 13 for third place, and that's just basic money gap application, 50, 70, 90 to red money gaps. And if we go to percentage return yet again, you can see this, the separator locations support the defining money gaps in trifecta. So pretty clear cut, pretty straight up and down, accommodating the the prevailing money profile. All right. Moving on, here we have a facsimile, probably an even stronger facsimile, well, a stronger application of what we looked at in the prior selection race. Once again, we're going to be selecting top 3 runners for first and second and down to runner 2 for third, applying the basic money gap concept in our selection making. Huge defining money gap here at the third runner. You can see quite clearly that over the at least three intervals, the money support for these three runners was quite dominant over the rest of the field, quite clearly defined, I think. And if we go to percentage return, yet again the separators endorse the selections that we've made using the defining money gaps in trifecta. So there's another trading race that's pretty straightforward. Moving on to our next selection race, which is a percentage return, and it's one of our old favourites. Strong favourite, very strong favourite, doubly strong if you like, because it's holding a pretty solid percentage of 35.25% of the money, and of course it's at the top of the field with its quite sizable separator associated with it. So that indicates to us that the favourite is, over the last 5 intervals, pretty strongly supported by the market. We have 7 and 8 as our potential group, defined by a 2.21 separator, which says that of the runners all the runners in the field, 7 and 8 are the dominant ones in the betting, and we can see quite clearly that's the case. In the cumulative dollars column, we can see that there is money dominance for those 2 runners at the 1 minute mark, at 2 minutes, definitely at 3 minutes, at 4 minutes, going all the way back. I mean, the main money action was for those top 2 runners. And so, and of course, the group, not surprisingly, is holding more than the required 47.5% of the pool. So over 50% of the money is being directed at those 2 runners alone. So that's going to be our established trading group, because the return is above the minimum requirement of 50%. Okay, moving on to the next trading race, which was another percentage return. Now, I think you'd be starting to see that there is nothing too mystifying about any of these selections. Here we're dealing with a weak favourite. I'll just take the lock off so you can see this. We're dealing with a weak favourite, number 16, holding 19.33% of the money. And I suppose the most money competitive runners with this weak favourite would be these 2, but of course if we're going to trade with a group of runners in percentage return, the group that we can finally settle on must be holding a minimum of 47.5% of the cumulative money. So that means that here we're obliged to add the favourite to our group to make up that percentage component. And I think if you look at the money support for the favourite over the last 5 intervals compared with these other 2 runners, they're not, even though they're the most money competitive with the favourite, they're not as strongly represented as we would possibly like. So I think that for several reasons it would be comforting to have the favourite included in any trading group that we're going to consider. You can see here at the 1 minute mark the solid money is for the top 3 runners. It's solid here, it's solid here, and so once again I think the ultimate outcome in percentage return was pretty well established, not just at the 1 minute mark but sort of further back over several intervals. So if you were following the recommendations when reviewing live races and monitoring things from interval to interval, I think you would have a fair inkling before the 1 minute mark that your potential trading group is going to feature the top 3 runners. And that is indeed the case. Another percentage return race. Once again, facsimile of the previous one. strong favourite. Favourite's got its own separator at the top of the field. Our preferred trading group is going to be 5 and 10. This time the group's holding 49.14%, which is still above the 47.5. We have the separator at 1.75, and remember that if you're going to trade with a favourite and one other runner, the minimum required separator defining the group must be 1.7 or bigger. And of course we can see that there is the dominant cumulative support here, very strong support here and here and here and here. So all the way back again in this race, you know, the indications are that the ultimate selection choice is going to be the strong favourite plus one other runner. So my point being that if you're consistently reviewing in the recommended fashion over several intervals, you're going to the betting trend in the race is going to almost presciently indicate the ultimate trading group before the 1 minute mark. Now we go to another percentage return. Now this time we've got a weak favourite, number 4, at the top of the field. Now if I go back to the 2 minute mark here, you can see that the favourite once again was 4, so there's no change of favourite at the 1 minute mark. If we go to the 1 minute mark, we can see that we've got a money competitive group of runners to stack up against this weak favourite, and money competitive here, definitely money competitive here, definitely money competitive here. The group 2, 1 and 3 on its own is holding more than the required 47.5% of the cumulative money. The favourite furthermore has no numbers in the WUP column. It has no negative values in the UDIF column. It's got a negative, it's got a 0 value. So once again we can happily trade against this weak favourite with a group, our group of 3 runners. And of course no percentage return breach, because we're the indicated return, potential return is 60.1%. So there's another trading opportunity that's pretty clear cut. Okay. MR06 is the next trading opportunity. Now if I just take the lock off, and we'll see where we're at to start with. The basic selections here at the 1 minute mark would be the top 2 runners for first, top 3 runners for second, and down to, well, it would be right down to the bottom for the lower money gap for third. But if we look at the prevailing money profile at the 1 minute mark, we can see quite clearly that there is grounds, solid grounds, for applying the additional allowance for first place. Looking in the brown band here, we can see runner 2 at the 1 minute mark is holding more money than runner 1. And back here you can see the money competitiveness of runner 2 with runner 1. So very strong grounds for justifiable application of the additional allowance for first, and likewise strong case for application of the percentage allowance for third. 89.77% of the money to a quite sizable money gap, and you can see how the money dramatically reduces below that level. So here 2 prudent application of the two allowances would give us the final selection outcome of 24 trifectas. Now if I go to percentage return, we can see further justification for the additional allowance because we have no corresponding separator with the at the second runner, or no separator at the second runner that corresponds with the money gap in trifecta. So in other words, in percentage return, the indications are that over the last 5 intervals, at least, the dominant money action was for 1, 2 and 4 as a group. Hence, a further endorsement of the justifiable application of the additional allowance for first. There we go. Sorry about the delay, I couldn't find it there. All right, moving on to the next selection race. Pretty clear cut, I think you'd agree. It's just basic selection process. 50% to a red money gap first, 70% to a red money gap second, 90% to a red money gap third. And if you look over here, you can see at the 1 minute mark, they're the selections that best accommodate the prevailing money profile. We look over here, we see that those top 3 runners are holding 67.71% of the money, but if we're going to contemplate applying the percentage allowance for second, we want to see clearly dominant money support for the top 3 runners, or the runners defined by the that money gap. And we also want to have that clear definition of money dominance endorsed by a money gap of 1.7 or bigger. So because it's a money gap considerably smaller than the 1.7 minimum requirement, of course the percentage allowance wouldn't qualify. So we just stick to the basic selections, which gives us an outcome of 54 trifectas. If I go to percentage return, you can see that once again the location of the relevant separators endorses the defining money gaps in trifecta. So all the indicators are very clearly signposting the most appropriate selection outcome. Next one, selection race was a percentage return. Now here we have, in terms of percentage at least, a weak favourite, number 1. But remember that if a favourite, whether it's weak or strong in terms of percentage, is at the top of the field with its own red separator, then it must be deemed to be a strong favourite, because the separator is indicating that there's been, you know, such an injection of money as to single the favourite out as being dominant on its own in the betting. So that's why when we see a favourite sitting at the top of the field with its own red separator, we call it a strong favourite, and when a favourite is considered to be a strong favourite, of course it must be added to any trading group that we ultimately consider. So here we're going to trade with the top 3 runners holding 49.11% of the money to a reasonable size separator. You can see the clear-cut money dominance here with the very strong money support for the favourite over the last 5 intervals, particularly back here. These two, at 3 minutes and 2 minutes, the money was very strong for the favourite. And so based on the money observations alone, you'd want to add the favourite anyway. But of course, the selection priorities indicate that it's a mandatory consideration. So we don't. There's no grounds for, no need for speculation or consideration or a debate about whether we do or whether we don't. It's all the indicators are saying it's got to be done, so therefore we do it. We have a trading group ultimately of quite clearly dominant trading group of 3 runners, and that's going to be our trading group in this particular instance. Another percentage return. Now this here I think is one that we need to spend a little bit of time elaborating on. As we all know, when we have equal favourites, or we should know, when we have equal favourites, of course, we're not going to trade against them, but we're quite able to trade with a group of runners inclusive of the equal favourites if all the other indicators stack up, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. 1 and 17 are the equal favourites that are obviously dominant over the last 5 intervals, as we can see. So our group, trading group, quite clearly the dominant trading group, look at the money support for these 3 runners here in the cumulative dollars column. Back here at the 1 minute interval, the money dominance is self-evident. It's evident here, it's evident here, it's evident here, all the way back once again to the 5 minute mark. The group's holding more than 47.5% of the money, as we can see yet again. Sizable separator, much bigger than the required minimum of 1.5. Now remember that if you're going to trade with 2 runners or a favourite as part of a 2-runner group, the minimum separator has got to be 1.7 or bigger. But then if the group's any bigger than that, the minimum size separator reverts back to 1.5. But you know, when we get down to the 1 minute mark and we see that we have a healthy separator that's considerably bigger than the minimum of 1.5, like we see here, 1.8, it simply reinforces the fact that the money support for our chosen group is clearly dominant. So the bigger the separator, the more clearly defined the group that becomes that is defined by that separator. Now the final trading race was this one in trifecta. Yet again we could consider megafecta as an option. Win dividend of $2, as we can see. Associated money gap of 2 or 2.5, which is bigger than the required minimum of 2, multiple 2. But here again, if you look at the money support, it doesn't. It's not strong enough, or it doesn't appear to be strong enough for the favourite to convince us that the favourite should be singled out on its own. If we go to percentage return, you can see the favourite, number 10, has got no separator at all. So even though it's got a money gap of 2.5 in trifecta, it has no endorsing separator in percentage return, and so that coupled with the fact that the money support for the favourite just doesn't seem to be anywhere near strong enough over the course of several intervals, would lead us to take the more conservative line and just opt for group selections. I mean, the prize, the trifecta pool is big enough at $14,000, but I think that if we're going to choose megafecta as an option and single out the favourite to come first on its own, we want to feel that all the indicators are in support of that. And one of the principal indicators is that the favourite is clearly dominant in the betting consistently over several intervals, and preferably that the money is building for the favourite as we get down to the 1 minute mark. If we go back for a couple of intervals here, you can see that the win dividend, it tells us a bit of a story too. At the 3 minute mark, it's $1.90. At the 2 minute mark, it's $2, and at the 1 minute mark, it stays at $2. So rather than the win dividend for the favourite reducing progressively, it's gone the other way. It's increased from $1.90 to $2, which sort of reflects the fact that the money support is has slackened and is not as strong as we would like it for us to single out the favourite to come first on its own. So I think all the indicators are quite clear, and the direction for as far as selections are concerned is quite clear. We just opt for group selections 50, 70 and 90, giving us a tradable race with 30 combinations. Now, I think you will have seen that in the great majority of instances, those selections that were made were pretty clear-cut and pretty obvious, self-evident, and would be made quite universally by a group of people who have a good command and understanding of the priorities that are required when you're running IQ Pro. Let's go to the data sheet now and have a look at see what the outcome was. And once again, it's a bit of a salutary story here. As we can see, we got away to a very positive start early with a nice return for the first race. Slight reduction with a loss here, but the profit, as we can see, starts to build quite handsomely toward the middle part of the race program. So I guess anybody who was being responsible under themselves would be, and monitoring their progress, would be starting to think of making their exit around about this area here. And as is so often the case, if you persevered on the expectation of making even greater profit, you'd be sadly disillusioned, because you can see that the profit level reached a crescendo in the middle of the race program, and then sort of started to slowly decline as we got towards the end. So it bears witness to the fact and bears testimony to the great benefit in monitoring your progress on any given day and being prepared to accept a profit that you feel is too good to lose. In other words, don't be greedy. If you feel that the profit is getting to a level that you want to protect, well then that's probably a good time to exit and not run the risk of having a reasonably solid level of profit eaten away into the latter stages of the race program. Now, before we finish, I want to, I suppose the theme for today was consistency and discipline in the application of the selection process that we endorse using this software. I want to sort of reinforce that by showing you a couple of races that were non-trading races if you are being disciplined in your application. All right, now here is a trifecta where the selections have created one guideline breach. Too many combinations at 63. Now we know that the maximum level of combinations that we work to is 60. Now there could be the temptation to say, well, I think that the selections are pretty clearly defined in this race, and they pretty clearly accommodate the prevailing money profile. And let's face it, it's only 3 combinations over the endorsed maximum. Oh, look, blow it. I'll ignore this guideline breach and trade. Guess what? It would have ended up losing money as a result. We go to a bit further down, another example. Yet again, selections have been made that are, reasonably clear-cut. Another singular guideline breach, dollars on top combo this time. Now, there could be, once again, the temptation to say, well, it's only one guideline breach. I'll blow it. I want a bit of action, so I'll trade. And guess what? The outcome is an unfavourable one, another loss. And yet again, here we go again with another quite clearly identified selection outcome in trifecta. Another dollars on top combo breach, a singular breach of guideline. Once again, if that discipline was not applied and that guideline breach was overlooked in the quest to continue to trade, another loss would have been incurred. So I think it very much reinforces the fact that yes, there are times where you trade out of races that could produce a reasonable level of profit, but there's 3 examples of races where strict disciplined selection application would have saved 3 successive losses. And so I think it's important to remember that discipline is a very important component with the use of the software, and I think that you can approach it from, and look at it like this, and it makes it easier to operate the software in an effective way, because if you concentrate your efforts on making selections that best accommodate money profile in races, working with all the priorities that we consider and we talk about in these webinars, you then throw it to the program to indicate to you whether you trade or not. And so if there's a guideline breach, if there are guideline breaches, that means it is a non-trading race. And as we can see quite clearly here, ill discipline in that regard would have resulted in the unhappy end result of quite significant loss. So I think it is quite a salutary lesson to be learnt and reinforced. So that's about all we've got to talk about today. I hope that's been of some assistance to everybody. And as I said, probably not quite as comprehensive today, because normally Matthew is here to curate questions and so on. Presents as being a bit difficult when there's only me on my own, so I hope you'll indulge me today. If you have any urgent questions, please don't hesitate to email me at peter@iqpro.com.au. If they're not particularly urgent, if you want to carry them over to the next webinar in a fortnight, you can raise them then, and we'll certainly come back to this day and answer any queries that arise. So I thank you for your attendance today. As I said, I hope you got something beneficial out of it, the presentation, and we'll look forward to talking to you again in a fortnight's time. So have a great weekend everybody, and bye for now.